Hey, everybody, grab your goat, grab something to drink, maybe grab some popcorn because it is time for the Witches Movie Coven. Yes, indeed, it is Wednesday and it is live. And I'm being the token girl here today, aren't I? I am. Sadly, Heather and Courtney are not here. They will be here next week, I am sure. But let's introduce ourselves. My name is Patti Negri. You might know me from The Witching Hour, my regular podcast, or from Ghost Adventures, or from 1,000 different things, bathroom walls across America. I just got, well, you know, my name's everywhere. I just got back from 2 weeks, which I could talk about later, in Romania or Transylvania specifically, in the Carpathian Mountains, and Paris, and talk about witchy. Holy moly. But let's introduce our regular guest and then our very special regular sometimes guest. Let's move over to our hair god, Jason.
I'm Jason Mankey. I'm a witchcraft author, having written 9 books. This is my first book, The Witch's Athame. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm also got married at Michigan State, which plays into our movie tonight. So I'm sporting my green and white colors.
Perfect. Thank you. Richard-Lael.
Yes, I have to say that's me because Courtney's not here. So that's me. I am Richard-Lael. Richard-Lael is one name, not two. If I were just Richard, I would be a. With that, I am the gentleman psychic. I am everywhere good gentleman psychics are sold, and there are some fakes, but you can always tell a knockoff. With that, I also teach. I teach at University Magicus, and typically on Saturdays. So that is where you can find me.
Thank you very much. And our special guest, who's our regular,
I have no hair.
Regular, Mr. Chad Hatter. Hey, welcome.
Thank you for having me. I am a costume designer working in Los Angeles, California. I'm an internationally ignored cosplayer, and I'm just happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you. Thank you so much. All right. Again, Heather, Courtney, hello, we love you. But you guys are just as important as we are. Carl and Mary Jane and Mickey and all you people out there. Robert, hi Robert. So on your button eyes, it's time for Coraline on the Witches Movie Coven. Indeed, that is our movie today. It is the movie Coraline, which is a stop motion action, whatever you call that, film from, I believe, 2009, if I can remember from 1 minute ago, which I'm not sure. Yes, 2009. Richard-Lael, just in case someone has not seen it yet, do you have an unbiased?
I do have an unbiased movie synopsis for you. So this is Tim Burton's Wet Dream. This is not a Tim Burton film. Everyone thinks it is a Tim Burton film. It is not. I cannot stress this enough. Is not Tim Burton. This is not Tim Burton. This is not Tim Burton. Just so you know. If you're
Richard-Lael,
yes.
Is this a Tim Burton movie?
Yes. No.
Richard-Lael, who didn't direct it?
Tim Burton. Tim Burton did not direct this movie. He has nothing to do with this movie. Nothing. So the story of Coraline is a beautiful stop motion animated film. And 2009, it is about a young family who moves into an old house that has been turned into apartment buildings. And mom and dad are both so incredibly busy. And Coraline is left to her devices in this old house. And of course, there are the neighbors who are old actresses. And then there's the neighbor who has a mouse circus because they're larger than fleas. And in this, she finds she can't go outside because there's mud, and her parents, who are gardeners, don't want her to get mud in the house. So they say, go explore and count windows or something. So she does go explore, and she finds behind wallpaper, not what I found behind wallpaper just 3 days ago, which were termites. I would much rather have discovered the Beldam, but I did not. I discovered termites. That's a whole other story for a whole other time. We'll go into that in a minute. This is about Coraline. So she peels back the wallpaper and she discovers not termites, but in fact, it is a tunnel that takes her to this mysterious realm where she has her other mother and her other father. And the kitty cat, who's a rather sassy cat, is able to speak a human language that she understands. And it turns out, of course, that the most curious thing about the other mother and the other father is they have quite an eye-catching design for fashion. And to button up that sentiment, they have buttons for eyes. Long story short, they try to convince Coraline, not Caroline. She gets confused with being called Caroline, but she's not a Caroline. She's Coraline. They try to convince her to stay in this other world. And it is only through the aid of the sassy cat that she's able to not stay, that she's able to resist. It turns out the other mother is not, in fact, her other mother, but is the Beldam, who is this spidery creature who sort of lives and feasts off of the souls of wayward children. And she ends up by being tracked back through. She's trying to catch her in the web, and she's gotten the eyes. Long story short, the Beldam, like every horror movie, you think that the Beldam is over. You think the villain is dead. She's not. The Freddy Krueger hand crawls across the stage, tries to get the key so that the Beldam can once more be released. Her parents come home. She breaks a snow globe getting out. They punish her for breaking the favorite snow globe. They seem to be oblivious to the fact that they were captured in the snow globe the entire time. I'm trying to figure out how this is a happy ending, but I guess I think it's a happy ending.
The ending is that Coraline comes to understand her parents a little bit more, because it's not always about your parents needing to understand you. Sometimes kids need to be cognizant of looking after their parents.
Oh, maybe
so that's the happy ending, is that she grows as a human. She grows up and learns that, you know, they really do care about her. She means the world to them.
100%.
And just because they can't drop everything they're doing to entertain her doesn't mean that she's not wanted and loved. And so that's her journey, is coming to understand them a little bit better.
Yeah, I still wouldn't be giving them any parenting awards.
No.
Just saying. All right, thank you, Richard-Lael. Now that everybody does understand the movie and the button eyes, Coley loves this. So I don't know where we want to begin. We don't have Heather to tell us all about the secret facts in the movie. I personally like that. I'm gonna like this because it started. I'm a big dowser, and it started out with she was water witching. She was dowsing around. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be a fun, good little witch.
Poison oak.
Yes.
Poison oak dowsing rod. Yes, indeed. So that was a good start for me, and I won't say where it went from there. Who wants to talk first? Chad.
So I started watching this movie, and then I fell asleep. And when I woke up, they were sacrificing a woman on the beach. Sorry, I'm trying to be Heather. And no, I'm joking. I'm totally joking. So fun little fact about me. Who here has heard of the TV show Robot Chicken? Okay. I work for them. I make tiny costumes and I dress the puppets. So
crap.
The stop motion animation element of this film is something I know quite a lot about. So I just wanted to talk for a little bit about sort of the work that went into creating the costumes for the puppets, because they're 1/6 scale of a human. They're tiny. And there's so many fascinating things about how to build it, how to take something that is large scale and make it small. And my favorite detail about the costumes in this movie is that the gloves that Coraline so desperately wants from the department store, and her sweater that the other mother gives her with the stars on it that are both knitted, were hand knitted using needles and thread for yarn so that the scale, when brought down on camera, would look like yarn, but it's actually thread. It's all hand done. And the way that we do things at Robot Chicken, which I assume is very similar because there's only so many ways you can dress a stop motion puppet, is that you build the individual pieces of the costumes, and then once you have your puppet, you assemble it. So you're knitting a sweater, but you're knitting, two sets. Jason, I do know Seth. I have a nasty habit of turning corners too quick and almost knocking him over. And twice I've accidentally knocked over Patton Oswalt because he's always in the offices and he's always in my way. But anyway, you knit, individual sleeves, you knit the torso, and then you assemble them, and then you go through with horsehair and a beading needle, and you sew all the individual things together. And what I love, 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 love about Coraline is that at the time that they made the movie, a lot of the textiles were hand done. So nowadays, if you needed say, the other mother, when we first see her, she's a mirror image of Coraline's mom. So she's in the sweater, but instead of the neck brace, the sweater has become a turtleneck. Well, the cuffs of her sweater and the turtleneck and the bottom is the ribbing off of a child's sock. So the ribbing that you see on the top of a sock around the ankle, they cut it into strips and worked it to create the ribbing on a sweater. But then later, when she begins to kind of transform and she has the polka dot look of a 50s housewife, that was fabric that they would have hand painted. So the evolution of the other mother from, looking like her mom to becoming this sort of eldritch horror, the polka dots begin to turn into scales, and they begin to take on this kind of arachnid kind of vibe. Because in the book, Coraline, which is radically different, the other mother looks identical to Coraline's mother, except her hair moves as if it's underwater constantly. And her hands have these long red fingernails that are always there. And when she gets bored, she taps on her eyes with it, and it creates this like ticking effect, and it's really unsettling. So for them to lean into the idea of a trap and a web and spidery and that sort of thing, I think is brilliant. And I also love that the other mother is elements of her are made of there's a sewing motif all through the film. The opening where you see the doll, the lure being made, and you see the hand made of needles and stuff like that. It's fabulous. It's absolutely fabulous work. But I love, 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 love the costumes in this movie because they're so beautifully done and they're so, so fabulous. And one other, before I relinquish back to the group at large, one other notable little factoid that you guys might get a kick out of is when you're dressing stop motion costumes, the hair and the fabric tends to move because you're moving them in increments and taking a picture, moving, taking a picture. So the way that we prevent fabric from jittering, because it'll do this if you're constantly moving it, after a costume is put on a puppet after they're dressed, we dunk them in starch. And so you stiffen all of the fabrics, and that's what prevents them from moving around on you. So when you look at Coraline's mom, her sweater is really frumpy and her jeans are kind of wrinkled. So the way you do that is you soak it, you spray it, whatever, with the starch, and then you go through and work all those wrinkles into it. So if you've got, 5 or 6 versions of the same character, that means every wrinkle has to be the same on every single one of them. So you're doing each one piece by piece by piece by piece by piece. And it's like at Robot Chicken, we do have tiny buttons. We 3D print them. And then they're cleaned up with the Dremel, but they're very small. And so we find ways to fake things a lot. My favorite thing to do is whenever I have to make a jacket with a zipper, the individual teeth of the zipper are metallic beads that are strung together so that when you see it on the doll, or on the puppet rather, it looks like the teeth of a zipper, but they're beads. Little stuff like that. So those are my factoids. I have more about this movie. I have a lot of information about this movie and the book. But as far as costumes go, which is I believe what I'm here for, that's what I have. That's what I have for now. So I'm really bad at. I'm really great at talking, but I'm really bad at stopping.
No, that's fascinating because I don't personally know anything about stop motion or how they do it. It seems very tedious way of filmmaking.
It is extremely tedious, but what makes it so fascinating is it's all real. You know, you're seeing the sets are built, the costumes are built. At Robot Chicken, we don't really do anything quite on this scale. But if you look on YouTube and you look online, you can find behind the scenes pictures of them working on the movie, and the set for the house, you know, would cover a kitchen table, but all the ground around it, the hills leading off into the cyclorama that then becomes the mountains and stuff, all of that it's there. There's no green screen. They build all of it, and everything is cut into like pie slices, so you can move a chunk, like a chunk out to get in and animate, and then you put it back, and then you take your picture, and then you move it out and you go back in, and it is a very time consuming process. I don't have to worry about that because all I do is dress the puppets and send them off to production.
But so it sounds much more creative for you then to create like a little zipper, getting creative by beads and stuff like that, or using children's socks and things.
Well, and it
that
forces everyone to be creative. Another fun little fact about this movie is that when you see the orchard full of cherry blossoms, that's all popcorn that they painted pink and glued. And so if you look, if you know, you can tell. But if you don't know, it just looks like an orchard of cherry blossoms, but it's all popcorn. That's what the blossoms are made out of.
Wow.
Wow.
Thank you. Have to watch it again now. Phew.
Yeah.
Okay, Jason, what do you have to think?
I think one of the things to point out about this movie is that it is a Neil Gaiman movie. So this is a young adult fiction book, and he was talking to the director of the film, Henry Selick, while he was writing the book. Henry Selick directed The Nightmare Before Christmas, which Tim Burton did not direct. Everyone thinks that, but he was the designer, right? I think Chad can back me up on some of the details. But Gaiman was explaining the book, and the director said immediately, I want this for this new studio that I'm starting. And they sold the rights to the book before the book was even published. And they began to work on Coraline. And to me, this is one of my favorite Neil Gaiman adaptations. It has everything I like about Neil Gaiman. You can feel like sort of the Sandman vibes. If you've been watching like Boy Detective Agency on Netflix the last month or two, that's there too. But this is such a great self-contained story, which is not something that Neil Gaiman usually does. It usually feels like every story has like a to be continued with it, which we've seen with Good Omens, like second and third season coming up. So this is, I think, Neil Gaiman at his best, and one of the best adaptations of a Neil Gaiman book or comic book.
I will say this though about it as an adaptation, they definitely made it more child friendly, because the book is
terrifying.
Horrifying. It is. You can read it in a handful of hours. It's an easy read. But the major difference, apart from it, the movie's kind of candy colored, but the major difference is that Wybie, who is the neighborhood boy that becomes her friend in the movie, does not exist in the book. She is on her own the entire way through. And their justification for adding the character was that they wanted to give her someone to talk to, so she wasn't just constantly talking to herself. I think the cat, services that need personally. But the one thing that they absolutely nailed are the kooky neighbors, because Mrs. Spink and Miss Forcible, who are the former actresses, are it's me and Richard-Lael in the future. And
That's so
I don't
true,
think,
yeah. That's so
and I
true.
don't think enough people are talking about it. Am I
And
wrong?
I have to admit, what I loved was the tea leaf readings that the neighbors are doing. I had a good chuckle about that. Oh, read the teas, dear. Oh, well, you're not looking closely. Oh, you have no good eyesight anyway.
Oolong. I love in the book, the stone that they give her to look through is a rock, but in the movie it's made of petrified taffy, so it's literally eye candy. I love that. I think that's great. And I love when they're performing for her in the other world, and they're doing this whole vaudeville thing. It's a fun watch. Oh, do you guys want to talk about the music by chance?
Yes, talk.
Yeah.
The music is incredible, and the lyrics are gibberish, and they're gibberish on purpose because the composer, Bruno, I believe his last name is pronounced Coulet. but he wanted it to be as childlike and eerie as possible. So it's all these children's choirs, but they're not actually singing real words. It's all like made up gibberish language. And I adore that because this soundtrack is phenomenal. It's eerie and it's wonderful and there's nostalgia. It's a it's just a great film overall. Um trying to think of what else. I love the aesthetic of the film. I love the aesthetic of the house. I love the Pacific Northwest. So the fact that they set it in the Pacific Northwest, so it's like always dreary and always gloomy, and so it made it that kind of Wizard of Oz vibe where it goes from black and white almost to brightly colored when you see the other world and the garden scenes especially.
Mhm.
And you have to think, a lot of people think with movies and stuff that you can just go find things, and with stop motion you have to make everything. And I love looking up the different apparatuses that they invented for the garden, because there are flowers that are hand crank flowers where the base is like a dog toy with a bunch of petals stuck in it, so when you crank it, it goes like this, and when you uncrank it, it slowly opens. And that's how they were able to get all the flowers to open at the same time, is they're all connected to the same apparatus. It's brilliant. It's the work that goes into it is insane. And I have one other thing to say before I continue making this show all about me. Someone down here in the comments made a comment about, if it's so time consuming and so expensive, why are people still doing stop motion like this? Well, I feel the need to point out that the studio Leica is Leica. I always get that wrong, but the studio is owned by the son of the CEO of Nike. So it's a privately funded studio. They can make whatever they want, and they do, without having to worry about a budget. It doesn't matter if their movies make money, they're able to keep making them because it's a passion project for this guy. And so it's the only time I ever approve of nepotism, because he's actually using it for for good. Because you look at the other movies they've done, like Kubo and the Box Trolls. They're such fun, weird movies that no mainstream studio would produce because they're not, bankable. But they are, because they're just it's art. It's art. It's
It
art.
is art. It is
And this
absolutely-
movie is so beautiful. Like, this is the prettiest stop motion animation movie I've ever seen. When I hadn't watched it in over 10 years, and I wondered if it was CGI at first, because it's just so vivid. The colors pop so much. Everything about it looks so perfectly put together. And I think when we think of stop animation, we often think of things like all the Christmas specials that we grew up with, which look crappy. And this just looks so good. It looks like they spent more than $60 million. Looks like they spent twice as much as $60 million.
Well, thank you. I probably really should watch it again. I watched it last night after jet lag, and I probably would wake up, not off and not off, but it sure was pretty. I must say though that I know it's telling a story, and I know you can get real psychological about it, but the relationships, the parent relationships, I just felt so sorry for her all the time. All the time. It's like, whether her real parents or other parents, or which parents are the real parents, it's like, I don't want to hurt like this. So that really did bother me. Again, I had jet lag. I had all sorts of things. I kept saying how pretty it is. And yeah, I like the little intricacies and I like the music, but it's like this poor little girl. So I'm still waiting for the happy ending, though. I'm still waiting for the happy ending.
It's an interesting cautionary tale for grown-ups that, the predators that exist in the world will always try to offer something that you're not making available to your offspring. And that's how they get them. And it's boiled down like a fairy tale to its simplest of terms, of just simply being, we've got better food, we've got more time for you, I've got a magic piano that plays my hands for me while I make up songs about you and make you my entire existence. but there's an interesting quote that I always think of when I think of Coraline, which is be wary of accepting anything from people who are in a position to take everything from you. You know, and it's because Neil Gaiman did say in an interview once, he said that he was kind of inspired by Hansel and Gretel, but he broke it down. He said Hansel and Gretel is about a cannibal witch who tries to eat two children after luring them into her home with candy, right? And he said if I wrote that today, it would never be published because it's too horrifying. So he ramped up the fantasy element, and it's interesting because there are some contemporary interviews with him where he refers to the Beldam as a witch. He does say she's an evil witch, blah 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 blah. But when you read the book, she's not. She's really not a witch at all. She's simply something that we don't have a name for yet. She's some other entity completely. Because it's true that in the book she only makes, as you know, there's a line that should have been in the movie that's not. That's in the book where Coraline is trying to figure out how much of the world she has built, and she starts walking away from the house. And the movie nailed this idea of the further she gets from the house, it starts to things kind of pixelate and go away and then come back again. And she references that she you know, she's walking in one direction away from the house and then she ends up walking back toward it. It's almost as if she like goes, you know, around the world and comes back. And she makes a comment. She's like, it's so weird that this reality only, you know, ends at the boundaries of this house. And the cat says, well, spiders' webs only need to be big enough to catch their prey. You know, and that's a line that should have been in the movie. It should have been in there because that's the moment where it clicks in her mind, where she's like, I might actually be in trouble here. And one thing that they did do in the movie that's not really in the book is that every time she one-ups the other mother, the world starts to collapse. And it, you know, you see the color drain out of the world and everything cracks. And I love the scene where when she's walking back through the house, as she passes the wallpaper, it peels and things begin to, you know, fall apart because the other mother is losing her control on this reality, because Coraline is taking, you know, she finds the souls of the ghost children and she begins to kind of, you know, she's stealing her sustenance. And there was a deleted plot line that, because I have a copy of the shooting script somewhere, but there was a deleted idea that they ran with where as the other mother begins to become more kind of arachnid and she starts to fall apart, she's starving. And so that's part of the reason why she's getting thinner and thinner and thinner, is because, you know, she's waiting to effectively eat Coraline. And they had this deleted plot line where there was going to be a scene where we were actually going to see her rip a piece of the flesh off of the needle bones that she has and eat it, because she's so emaciated. She's feeding off of herself, and that's why she's all broken apart the way that she is, because she's just waiting to eat Coraline. And if you look at the concept art for the movie, and it's so chilling, but there's when the world breaks down to its base component, which is ultimately the spider web, in the concept art, the bodies of the children are woven into the web. Like the husks of them are there. So it's gateway horror at its best, but also it would be so easy to remake this story as a legit, like, rated R film, because all of it is there. So it makes sense that they candy colored it the way that they did it, because they had to find a way to make it palatable when you really look at it, it's so dark. It's so dark. And there's another great moment in the book. Feel free to cut me off. You can mute me at any time. There's another great moment in the book where the cat has the ability to come back and forth from the real world to the other world. And Coraline makes a comment like, oh, you must be the other cat. And he's like, I'm not the other anything. And she's like, oh, well, you know, you don't have button eyes. And he's like, no, her kind don't like cats, you know, which is to me another indicator that she's not a witch. But anyway, in the book, the cat is ultimately the one that kind of saves the day a little bit, because he knows what's going on because he's a cat. Cats they know things. And he becomes her guide throughout all of it. But there is a point where she toward the end, she bumps into him and he looks scared and she's like, "Why are you scared?" And he's like, "I can't get out. She figured out how I was getting in and out and she closed all the doors. I can't leave." And he's terrified because he's now trapped in this reality. Whereas before he was very cavalier about going back and forth and stuff like that. And I love the moment in the movie where he catches the kangaroo mouse and he kills it and it turns into a rat because it's one of her spies. Because he's ultimately, you know, the cat. I love the cat. And the actor that they got, oh God, whose name I'm blanking on, but the actor who's the voice of the cat is perfect casting.
Keith David.
Keith David, thank you. Yeah,
voice
no,
of Goliath on Gargoyles.
I was gonna say Gargoyles. Just incredible.
And wouldn't you think, Chadwick, and everybody, wouldn't you think that maybe she might not be a witch, the beldam, but what do you think she might be related to Pennywise the clown?
It's what's interesting about the It backstory franchise, whatever, is they do go into there is information in It where you find out that Pennywise, spoiler for anyone who wants to read, but he's something malevolent. He's a deity of some sort that got trapped on this plane of reality and figured out the best way he possibly could to survive was to evolve with humanity and become this thing. Because even Pennywise, there are creatures in the universe that he's afraid of. You know what I mean? So they're not dissimilar at all. I'm also reminded of, if any of you are Fran Dreschers, all the Fran Dreschers. If any of you are fans of Gravity Falls, there's an element of Bill Cipher has an element of Pennywise and an element of Other Mother woven into him as well. You know, and I love it when kids win the day. I love it when they're the heroes of their stories, and that's why I love Alice in Wonderland and why I love The Wizard of Oz and, you know, that sort of thing. And I think that I also have a problem with authority. So any opportunity to one up a grown up, I'm gonna be all for.
Richard-Lael.
Yeah, well, I will actually talk a little bit about the spider form. So there is, according to Greek mythology, and which has weaved its way into other religions, is Arachnia. Arachnia was a woman who would weave. That was what she did. She wove and wove and wove. And one day she said, "I weave better than the goddess herself." And Aphrodite was very angry, and she said, she comes down and she had a weave off. And so Arachnia did weave better than the goddess. And so Aphrodite says to Arachnia, "You want to weave? You better weave." And she turns her into a spider. In a modern vernacular, she says something along those lines. But in her own right, Arachnia becomes a goddess in her own right. And I find it to be quite intriguing because the spider is oftentimes the villain or the evil or the wicked, when really spiders are very clean. They take care of pests. They weave your dreams for you. They oftentimes do not attack humans. They just don't have, either their mouths are too small, or, you know, if they get startled, then maybe they might, but typically spiders are not after humans. And then on my own self, I know this sounds kind of cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, and she's probably watching, so I'm going to tell you this anyway. So many years ago, I have a friend who, his mother had injured her back, and she was in some bad way. And my friend said, "Well, you know what? I'm just going to give her a rock and tell her that I went to this black magician, and that's all that it is. And I think it's just in her head." And I said, no. Actually, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't just give her that, because you could really mess her up even worse. Don't do that. I said, actually, what I will do, I'll write her a letter. I will dream of her. Oftentimes I do visit people in dreams. I do cross over, and I I help people. So I lit candles for her, and I went to sleep, and I dreamt that I was in this cave, and I was wearing my fine top hat, and I was dressed all in black, and I was working. I knew I was working on this back, and I was working my arms. I just kept working on this back, someone's back. And then I hear this scream, and I look up, and this woman is running out of this cave, running as fast as she can. I said, no, come back. I'm trying to help. So I thought, well, that was quite an intriguing dream. And then my friend's mother told him, I had this dream, and I know that it was your friend, and I am so sorry. I was in this cave, and I saw this giant spider wearing a top hat, and it looked like he was spinning yarn around somebody. And I was scared, and I ran away, and tell your friend I'm really sorry. So spiders get a bad rap, but really spiders are not wicked or bad or evil, and actually are a symbol of power, and they're a symbol of divine femininity, which is, I think, a beautiful thing.
We mentioned how this movie was not directed by Tim Burton. But another movie that's also not directed by Tim Burton that everyone thinks is James and the Giant Peach. And I always loved that in the original illustrations, Miss Spider is drawn as an archetypal mother, because she becomes the mother figure to James. And I love the idea of, this mom with 8 legs being able to give the ultimate hug.
And look at Charlotte's Web. I mean, that's another one where the spider ostensibly saves Charlotte.
Wilbur.
No, Wilbur.
Wilbur.
Charlotte saves Wilbur, because otherwise he was just a pig who was bound for
dinner.
Who was bound for dinner. And Charlotte, in her kindness, weaves a web and says, okay, let me just do this. And it even goes back to the 3 fates who weave their web. Now, that could be, they can be loving or not, but it goes back to 3 fates.
Going back to Charlotte's Web, there's a beautiful quote from it that I adore, which after his life has been saved and Charlotte is about to die at the end of the book, spoilers, he says to her, why did you do all this for me? I have done nothing for you. And she replies, you have been my friend. And that in and of itself is a massive deed. And that just wrecks me. Because it was my mom's favorite book growing up, so I have a connection to Charlotte's Web.
So you do like all the like beautiful, loving stuff, and when I think of Charlotte's Web, all I can hear is Paul Lynde going, "Hey there, Charlotte." When that's all that I can hear in my head. That's it. That's all Charlotte's Web to me is another Paul Lynde vehicle.
That is also true. That is equally true.
But also, thank God Paul Lynde was able to be the voice of a rat, because that's just art and life intersecting beautifully. I love Paul Lynde. That's not an insult to Paul Lynde.
I love great.
Paul. No, well, I think we all do.
Who didn't love Paul Lynde? And I think Charlotte Web was one of my favorite books too. And I think loving spiders is a running thing in this in our chat room. I've always loved spiders because the intricacy of their webs and what they can create.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and they're born with it. They don't have it's not like birds who are taught to fly and lions that are taught to hunt. Spiders hatch and they got it. And I've always had great respect. Growing up in Colorado, where I'm from, we get, the barn spiders and orb weavers and stuff like that make the webs the size of a stop sign. And being able to just right at dusk when they start, working on it, being able to just kind of sit back and watch them. People are always like, they have too many legs. No, they have the exact amount they need to do what they do. And I've always appreciated that I work with thread and they work with thread. And it's just, I hold on. I have to chat amongst yourselves. Hold on.
I will tell you, I used to have a pet spider named Aristotle. And Aristotle, of course, those of you who know my one obsession is the Addams Family. Aristotle was the octopus that the Addams Family had. but I had a pet tarantula, and I was maybe 12, and my sister and brother-in-law were living upstairs in the house that I grew up in. And my sister's husband, who's 6'3" and was like 250 pounds, he comes running downstairs at like a madman, and he says, oh, there's a spider, it's as big as my head, there's a spider. And I go upstairs, and it is just a brown tarantula, and I scoop it up, and it became my friend, and I had that spider for so many years. And the only thing that I will tell you, that the only time it actually startled me, is that I would keep the spider on my shoulder and walk around the house, and I had forgotten that it was there one day. And up my shoulder crawls this giant spider, and it was the size of my hand. I looked down, and there's this big brown thing, and I went, oh, right, okay, all right, it's Aristotle, okay.
So
Darn.
my wife's absolutely scared to death of spiders. So in our house, she's always screaming, Jason, come take care of the spider. When she was a small child, she was looking up at her ceiling one night, and she saw her ceiling moving because there was like a spider nest up there, and all the babies were born. So she came down and told her parents, the ceiling is moving, something is wrong. And they ignored her. Eventually her dad went up, sprayed the ceiling with bug spray, and then left. And then she went, then she's in bed, and all of the spiders started falling on her face. So my wife is absolutely terrified of spiders, and it's not a joke. Like, I can't touch a bush or walk through like a low-hanging limb of a tree, let it scraping my hair or something, because she's like, Jason, there's a spider in there, and you're going to bring it home. So in our house, spiders are really bad, and I feel really, really terrible that I have to kill them, but I also like being married. So
So
it is what it is.
I don't have a Black Phillip, but I have.
How beautiful.
So this is Aristotle.
My wife just screamed in the other room. So there you go.
Is it really named Aristotle? Did you name
It is. That's why I was giggling, because I was like, oh, great minds and all that. But yeah, he lives on my bed. So when I remember to make my bed, which is very rare, I'll get all the pillows stacked up, and he just sits on top of the pillows and chills, and I think
beautiful.
Isn't he great?
Yeah, I've never seen a stuffed spider.
Unfortunately, it is from Harry Potter Land at Universal, and I bought it before we found out that J.K. Rowling was one of the worst human beings currently living. So I don't feel too bad about it. But at the same time, I have never seen a stuffed spider either. So I was like, I might rhinestone it, and
Perfect.
So yeah.
I just can't get past. I'm worrying about toxic bug poison in your wife now, Jason.
Oh,
She's, we've been married for 20 years. I think that if that was there, she's probably over it by now. But the fear remains of spiders, right? And that will never go away. If there's a scream in the house at 9:00 at night, 5 in the morning, whatever it is, I know what the scream is about. There is a small spider the size of a dime somewhere on the wall that no other human being could see. But she has like a radar now for spiders. Like, it's right there, Jason. It's right there in the corner. It's in the corner of the house. And I'm like, there's nothing. Oh, okay. It's amazing, like, how her spider radar goes off.
Her spider sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
I lived in a big old house. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I just even feel guilty watching Spider-Man movies now. It's a very real fear, and I can't make fun of her for it, because that would have been very traumatic.
That's traumatic.
As a kid, right? Yeah, all those little spiders coming down.
I used to live in Pasadena in a big old Victorian house that had a lot of spiders, a lot of spiders. And I got this ding dong, on the door, and it's this man in this sort of white uniform, and he says, "Hi, I'm here in the neighborhood, and do you have a moment to speak about?" And it was not what you would think, but he was saying, I'm just going through the neighborhood and talking about, exterminating and getting rid of some of the pests. And I said, I don't have any pests. He says, but I look around and I see you've got a lot of spiders. I said, I know, I don't have any pests. He said, but you have spiders. And I went, why do you think I don't have pests? I have
Because I have
spiders.
spiders.
I don't have pests. I have spiders. They're my friends. You're not going to poison my friends.
There is a bush out in front of my apartment building that is filled with wolf spiders that, if you don't know anything about a wolf spider, their webs are tunnels. They look like a little silk funnel that just kind of, and they sit down inside of them and wait for things to land in them. And this bush has so many of them. They look like little balconies just all over the bush with little wolf spiders in them.
Those are all up and down Lake Hollywood. And they look like almost like silk. They're not like big loose webs. And then they each have a little hole. They each have a little tunnel. And they're almost uniform. The whole like 3 miles around at Lake Hollywood at certain times of year.
That's amazing.
They're the most beautiful thing I ever saw. We actually had a big wood pile in my little suburban Los Angeles house, but we had pet black widows. We just knew not to play with them and not let them in. We just didn't play with them. So yeah.
Patti, I constantly forget that you and I live in a 20-mile radius of each other.
Oh, yeah, we do.
And yet we never make an effort to see each other ever. And I was hanging out with a friend of mine the other day who is a sorcerer almost full time, and he was like, "What's Patti like? Is she nice?" And I was like, "She's great. I don't know her."
Well, we'll have to hang out. I'm out of town a lot right now, but I will be back. I'm going to be here half of June and all of July, so we will hang.
We'll figure it out.
We'll look at spiders. We can go.
Yeah. Oh, it'll be great. I have a whole like hike in Burbank that I do mid-summer during their nesting season, where all the orb weavers are. That make the big beautiful webs. Richard-Lael and I have a mutual friend by the name of V. Neil, Oscar-winning makeup artist. But she has this
Oscar award-winning
3 times. Her backyard, which Richard-Lael has been in many times. The last time he was there, he was wearing very little clothing. But there's an upper layer and there's a
story
lower.
We're not getting.
It was Halloween, and he was dressed as the Emperor's new clothes. So he comes out in a powdered wig, makeup, crown, and a sash, and that was it. And heels. And he went around telling everyone how terrible they looked and telling them to look how great his clothing was, and there was nothing there. But this lower level in V's backyard is just a bunch of trees and this giant shed where she keeps her Christmas decorations. We're only there in November. We never go down there. And the other last year, the other summer, I was doing something at her house, and I decided to walk down to this lower level at night. And I thought, oh, I should take my phone out. And I take my phone out and I turn the flashlight on and I lifted it, and there were 5 or 6 gold, like yellowy blobs just in midair, because they were all giant orb weavers that had built webs in between the trees in the entire lower lot of her backyard. And I was like, I can go no further. And so I went back inside and I told V what happened, and she was like, I want to see. So I took her and I showed her, and she, was horrified. And then the next morning she called me and she says, they're all gone. They're gone. I don't know what happened. They're gone. And I said, V, that breed of spider takes their web down every morning. They build it at dusk. They hunt through the night. And then in the morning, they take the web down and they sleep during the day. And she was like, you're joking. I said, no, you can walk. You could go all over. You're not going to disturb them. There's nothing there. I said, but at 7 o'clock, if you were to go down there and crack open a cold one and just wait, you'll see all of them come out of their little hidey spots and then go back up and then make their anchor lines and then start weaving their webs together. And then they just chill. And that's why I love them. They're tidy. Mm-hmm. They're way more put together than I will ever be as a grown adult.
They make their bed every day.
Which I do not.
Which I do.
So anyway, my question is, now that we're down to our last 9-10 minutes, did we adequately cover Coraline, or was it just a lot of me yammering and spider talk?
we went into spiders. We have to move on. I have nothing more to say about it because I had too much jet lag and I just want better parenting, but it was a beautiful, beautiful film. And we don't have any quotes unless anybody has any quotes because Courtney's not here.
Go ahead, Chad.
I have quotes, but they're mostly quotes from the book. There's a great moment in The Other World where she's talking to the cat and she says, "We could be friends." And he turns around and glares at her and says, "We could be dancing elephants, but we're not." And then he goes, "At least I'm not." Because he's a cat. He's sassy. I love Mr. Babinski constantly calling her Caroline and her constantly having to correct him. For those that don't know, Coraline is the scientific name of the rainbow effect you see inside of seashells. That's what that is called. It's abalone is a type of shell, but Coraline is that rainbow sheen that you see inside of a shell. Sorry, I forgot to mention that earlier. Jason, you go off. I'm sure whatever you were going to say was much better than whatever I'm scrambling to try to find.
Well, but I did have one quote that I really loved watching the movie. When Coraline's parents are trapped and she's looking for them, the other mother just says, "Maybe they got bored with you and moved to France," which I always thought it was just so funny. Like randomly, your parents are going to move to France and leave you there.
You want to know something great about that snow globe? That snow globe with that fountain, which I guess is real important in Michigan, or I think it's Michigan. It's a specific fountain at the Detroit
Zoo. Yeah.
They don't make snow globes of that fountain. But then this movie came out and so many people were trying to find them. They started making them because of this movie.
Wow.
So you can get that fountain as an actual snow globe now, but before you could not. Do you guys want to know some other little facts about this movie real quick?
It has to be real quick because Mr. Jason has a movie minute.
Okay, so since this was Leica's first big film, they did a massive viral marketing campaign to make sure that it would be like everywhere. And the way that they did it was they made the key, the button key, they made thousands of them, and all it had on it was Coraline.com, and that was it. And they scattered them in every major city all over the world. So you'd be walking down the street and there'd be one hanging from a tree, or there would be one sitting on a shelf, or there would be one on the ground. They were everywhere. You can still find them because people collected them and started selling them and mass producing them and whatever. Also, the box that the other mother presents the button eyes with the needle and thread in, they mass produced those, that handmade, and they sent them out to nowadays what we would call influencers, but before they sent them out to like celebrities and people with platforms so that they would open them up and post about it and get people interested by simply making it cryptic. So you'd go to Coraline.com and it was the house, but if you were there long enough, it would change and it would get really decrepit, and you'd see the other mother's hand come out and flip a switch and it would go back. Like they did weird, eerie things to drum up interest for the film. And that was that. Oh, I had another one, but I'm going to stop because that's good enough as it is. But yeah, you can still find the button key because they made real ones out of iron that they just left all over the world to drum up interest for the film. So, okay, I'm done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Jason, do we have a movie Mankey moment?
We do. This was tough. I love this movie, so it's hard to make fun of a movie that I like. But these were a few lessons I learned from watching Coraline. Hey, parents, the best way to keep your child from going to the other world or similar places like the Upside Down is to give your kids something to do. Melanie and Charlie Jones, the parents of Coraline, could have spared their daughter a whole lot of angst and suffering if they had just broken down and bought Coraline a PlayStation. Can't afford a PlayStation 3 in 2009? No worries. A used PlayStation 2 probably would have had a lot of life left in it. Don't like your kids playing video games? Okay, that's fine. What about books? I don't remember seeing Coraline sit down with any books, and something tells me she would have enjoyed the Percy Jackson series. Coraline doesn't even seem to own a bike or a puppy or a cat. What kind of parents are these? Come to think of it, I too would want another mother and another father. Mormonism is the correct answer. Need all the mysteries of the other world revealed to you? Then visit your weird old neighbors and borrow their peepstone, likely hidden under 100-year-old sticky candy. A peepstone was used by the Mormon prophet Joseph Smith to translate a series of golden tablets written in alleged Reformed Egyptian hieroglyphics to reveal the Book of Mormon. And a peepstone, of course, was used by Coraline to reveal the truth of the other world. The lesson I'm taking from this is that Mormonism is the correct answer to life's questions, and I will soon be leaving this show to participate in the Righteous Mormons movie coven. Cats are the ultimate. You without Courtney here, like my favorite source of laughter is gone, so thank you. Cats are the ultimate weapon. Having trouble with an evil witch? Need to reverse a hex Courtney Buckley has put on you? Well, the only answer is to fling your cat at your tormentor. We all know just how much cats love to be picked up, and they'll love being thrown at a person even more. And don't worry, there's absolutely no risk that the cat you are throwing will bite your fingers or claw your arm until it's bloody. The cat understands why you have to throw them and will be completely cooperative. Trust me, would this face ever lie to you? Michigan State University is the greatest university in Michigan. For years, many people in Michigan and across the United States have suffered under the delusion that the University of Michigan is superior to Michigan State. Is anyone wearing a University of Michigan shirt in Coraline? No, they are not. And since Coraline is one of the greatest animated movies of all time, we can be sure that the shirt's inclusion in the movie means that Michigan State is superior to the University of Michigan. It's where I was buried. I love Michigan State forever. Some of you are not going to like this next one, but it's true. Dolls are creepy, and dolls that look like you are even creepier. I'm pretty sure that there's a cabinet at Heather's house full of dolls that look exactly like Heather. I'm just saying that if Heather shows up on the show someday with buttons for eyes, you know exactly what happened. I won't be here, of course. I'll be on my new Mormon show, but you'll see Heather's button eyes and exclaim, "By gods, Jason was right." If someone gives you a doll that looks like you, throw that down a well. You are welcome.
I have a doll that looks like me.
Yeah.
You do.
30 seconds. Talk about.
I have one that looks like me too.
Let's talk amongst ourselves.
I have a nutcracker in my nutcracker collection that looks like me.
I've got a bunch of Barbies that look like me. Oh, look at that. Very much so.
Yeah, but I can't grow a beard, so it will never completely look like me.
But you got the hair. Yeah, that looks just like you, Richard-Lael.
That's so good. So good.
Hold it. Don't move. Richard-Lael. Wait, no. Richard-Lael, hold it back up. Don't move. Don't move. I just want to take a screenshot.
Wait, let me see if I have one of my Barbies. Hold on. Wait.
Okay, I'll wait.
Wait.
Have you guys done... Oh, never mind. I'll save it for the after conversation. Okay. Okay.
Oh, yes. There it is.
Hold it back up, Richard-Lael. Everyone hold up your dolls. Got it. Thank you.
All right. Well, we are at that time. So anybody's going up for it. I want to talk first because if anybody has regular television still on the CW tomorrow night, my friend Patti Stanger, you know her from The Millionaire Matchmaker. She has a new matchmaker show on right now. It is called The Matchmaker with Patti Stanger. And I'm on that episode tomorrow. It plays at 8 p.m. on the CW. And it was really fun to shoot. And speaking of dolls, we made puppets. I got to be witchy me, even though I was hired and then I was fired because I was a witch and then I was hired again, which is weird for CW, I must say, getting famous on witch and things, but we made it. So, and really fun show. And anybody who's going to be anywhere near Pennsylvania, I love that leg. I just got home from 2 weeks of climbing 14 flights of stairs a day in ancient castles. But I'm going to be at Penhurst Paracon at Penhurst Asylum in wherever that is, Pennsylvania. And I'm going to be doing a mediumship gallery and all sorts of ghost hunts. And I hear this big, scary, haunted place. And next week Texas and next week afterwards. But follow me. Go to pattinegri.com. Watch Witching Hour. And who's next? Jason.
Thumbs, wands up or wands down?
There yet? Wait, are we there? Okay. Okay. Yes, we are.
This was a conclusion before the show started, though. No one is going to give this
dowsing
movie
rods.
wands down. Yeah.
Dowsing rods up.
Brilliant.
Oh, I
Yes.
guess I should read my tea leaves.
Read your tea leaves. Tea
Too
leaves up.
long.
Tea leaves up. Okay, we should sell look-alike dolls.
I could make them. I could
Will you make them for us? Will you dress us and make
Yeah.
them? Okay.
Absolutely. Send me your favorite picture of yourself, and I'll make you guys dolls of you.
Okay.
Okay, it's a deal. All right, but before we go, does anybody else have anything coming up? I hogged this one because I'm busy.
I'm gonna go next. If anyone is in Omaha, Nebraska at the end of June, I will be there at Ocon as a special cosplay guest. I'll be doing a couple sewing workshops. So please feel free. And otherwise, you can find me at Instagram, Chad Hatter, like Mad Hatter, but Chad Hatter. And that's it.
Thank you. Jason.
I will be at the North Dakota Grand Sabbath May 30th through June 2nd. This is pretty exciting because I've never been to North Dakota doing workshops and stuff.
Cool. Thank you. Richard-Lael.
I will be here in New Orleans, at least for the foreseeable future. And I am at thegentlemanpsychic.com. And what movie are we doing next week?
We are doing I Have Been Waiting for You from 1998. I know nothing about it, but it's called I Have Been Waiting for You. And did somebody say it was a TV movie or something like? Does anybody know anything about it?
It's a TV movie starring Punky Brewster, Marky Post, who was on Night Court, and the other Becky from Roseanne. So there are some famous TV people in it. And it was also probably the title of a Richard Marx love song. That's what it sounds like to me.
So anyway, we are 2 minutes over. So we have one more thing to do. Let's go. Let's cackle. You guys out there want to cackle with us. So wands way, way up. 1, 2, 3. Oh, yeah.